All right, everybody, welcome to Tesla Today. We have breaking news. Even just a few hours ago, there's an article that was written out that said the new statistic is that electric cars has now passed a crucial tipping point. In 23 countries, more than 5% of all cars are now electric vehicles. When that has happened, then that becomes an S curve. We're running away. We're going to learn more about why the US is lagging. We got Jeff Lutz with us today. He's a C-level supply chain and previous chief quality officer for some Fortune 100 companies. He's now running his own consulting firm. Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate you joining me.
Great to be with you.
Let's get right into this big news. So this kind of situation here now is that the electric cars have passed a crucial tipping point in 23 countries. So, and then this Bloomberg Green Analysis, they're saying that once 5% of new car sales go fully electric, everything changes at that point. And you can see that from the EV adoption curve of other countries that have been doing this already today. So this threshold signals the start of mass adoption when technology preferences rapidly flip. So the newcomers that's recently hit this 5% is Canada, Australia, Spain, Thailand, and Hungary. That joins a cohort that also includes the US, China, and most of Western Europe. And then if you look at those trajectories, they can surge from 5 to 25% in just 4 years. So if we look at the actual table here you can see that this is the years after crossing 5% threshold. And you can see that the curve goes up quite significantly, and the percentage of EV new vehicle sales, we're talking battery only, not hybrids. Once you hit the 5%, which is this line here, in about 4 years, you can get to 30%. Jeff, what's you're thinking about this news?
Yeah, and this is one of the core thesis of investing in EV companies, investing in Tesla, because they have the scale and the proven ability to help these countries reach that tipping point and enable these countries to do that. And this is going to continue. And I think this whole concept of distribution is fascinating. A lot of people don't realize, today, for example, the global smartphone market somewhere in the 1.2 billion units per year type run rate, but it started at sub 10 million, in 2007, 2008, and it was a very small number. And look where it is today. And one of the big things around that is distribution and cost structure. And this is what's happening right now with EV. The cost structure piece of it really hasn't come yet outside of Tesla and some of the Chinese competitors. And those two, coincidentally, are the ones that are leading the global adoption of EV. So, and the other thing I think people understand is when you're thinking about the whole Tesla thesis is just the amount of penetration that's occurred of EVs in markets is still very small and very nascent. Today, 92 out of 100 cars bought in the US are still non-EV. So there's still a fair amount of both of distribution and adoption that needs to occur. But there's whole countries in the world that don't have very little to no EV adoption. But underlying that data, if you look at that US data, for example, it's up 40 to 50% year on year. And so that kind of growth is outstripping the growth of just pure auto. And of course, any kind of downtrend or stall in auto growth, that EV secular growth is outstripping it.
The thing that I'm trying to understand here is that I think that this is actually not taking into consideration the incentives. So this shows here, right, that if the US catches the trend, a quarter of new cars would be fully electric by 2026. Now they're just comparing it to kind of all the other countries, but each country has different incentives. And one of the reasons why Norway is at 80% of all new cars that are now electric vehicles is because they had massive incentives 4 or 5 years ago that really kickstarted this, plus including to that is penalties for the gas cars. And so for those reasons, right, that really just kickstarted. Here in China, that's the reason why they're at close to 30% at this point, because again, of the incentives. So the US, It's not going to be just a quarter of new cars will be fully electric by 2026, Jeff. I mean, like, I think it's going to be higher. I'm going to share some more information of what Bloomberg says of their reason why US is lagging. But what's your thoughts?
Yeah, but in just one comment on the incentives, I agree the incentives are going to help, and I think what the U.S. politicians have done so far is somewhat helpful. It's arguable, is it a bailout to big auto, because there's vehicles in the IRA that have 7 kilowatt hour batteries and use more gas than obviously than run on electricity, and they're also getting the credit. But you're going to get some of that, but the incentives are going to help. But I think the free market economics are what's key. Without the IRA, Tesla is already producing vehicles, basically 95% of their vehicle mix 3 and Y that have an average transaction price that's well below the average ICE or combustion engine transaction price in the US. And that's the key for this whole thing to work. Is it can't you because these incentives are going to come and go. They're going to come and go with different leadership and so forth. What you really want is you want the free market to work, and you want the cost to make EVs to come down precipitously, and the performance to stay there or continue to improve. If I get really good performance and I get the cost I want, that's a home run product. And that's one of the reasons we see the Model Y that's, it's now the number one selling single model in the world. And one other comment on this is this are the supply chain implications of reaching this tipping point. Leaders in commodity supply chain, when they see this, and this is very encouraging information in terms of like, all right, what do I capacitize my factories to? Like, I build product for ice makers, I build product for EV makers, and it helps them do their planning, because who wouldn't want to win a part award on the Tesla Model Y? If you win a part award on the Tesla Model Y, your one part award is going to be the single highest volume component you make if you're just serving the auto industry. And you want to make a lot of the same component because you're using the same tooling, you're using the same everything to do it, and therefore you can bring your fixed cost structure down with it. So the whole piece of EV adoption um, and this growth is key for supply chain. And the only other comment I would make on this is, I think a lot of decisions around what people do with their capacity, with their labor, with their investments. You see Tesla asking suppliers to set up in Mexico, and they're all looking at these adoption rates and saying, is this going to be a good investment for my business? And it's not like you just want to be working in EV. You also want to be working with the partner that's going to get you the most volume, and says what, when what they say is what they actually do. And Tesla has a history of meeting and exceeding their volume commitments to
Yeah.
suppliers.
So that's a fantastic point, right? So this is like they're taking the adoption rate of what other countries are, and then they're saying this is what's going to happen. But the reality is that the world is changing for the technology. The costs are going down, like you're saying, as more volumes coming up, costs will go down. The unit economics will change. Everything will change. Here's the reason why Bloomberg research said that U.S. is lagging. I find this very interesting. Curious to see what you think. Their point is that in the U.S. the EV tipping point did not arrive until late 2021, which is late, right? But the reasons for that delay, they said, is because number one, Americans spend more time in their cars. Drivers demand longer range than early models that could have offered. And then we do know this is true that in the US specifically, there's very few sedans and more pickup trucks and large SUVs, more than half the US market. And then so they need massive battery needs for that. That's again, I'm surprised they did not put incentives in there as one of the reasons. And then, but the US EV sales are rising fast, up 42% in the second quarter compared to last year. And then now that Tesla is about to launch a Cybertruck, that's going to change as more EVs come for the trucks. That's going to now change. And so these things should change the trajectory, not just what they have now. What's your thoughts, Jeff?
Yeah, a couple of things. One is for the adoption curve in the US to continue to grow, there's going to need to be other entrants outside of Tesla that can produce an EV at a compelling cost structure, um, and deliver it in volume. And that's really yet to have happened. And that's going to be one of the key things. The other key thing is like, so I'm in the Midwest, and I bought my first Tesla in 2013, and there were very few. I mean, I could literally count the charging stations on one hand in the Chicagoland area, when when I first got my car. And I did think a bit about range, because the cars at that point were, in the, call it the 230 to 270-mile range. And so you had a little bit of thought in the back of your head about, okay, am I going to get trapped somewhere? I never did. Um, and never really got close to that. And of course, and I have charging solutions at home as well. But now take that and multiply it by, everybody else that's considering buying an EV, and that's been one of the problems with adoption from non-Tesla. So Tesla has, I mean, the number of superchargers in the Midwest has just skyrocketed. You really have no concern of like going out and having a problem, with range, or being able to find a place to charge. Number one. But number two, the competitive solutions, and there's some really good, interesting videos out there. Jim Farley did this whole drive across the US and really experienced firsthand the issues of, and the concerns of walking up to a non-Tesla charger, and is it going to work? Is it going to function? Is it, if you find one open, is it going to work, and is it going to function? Or did I get to my charging destination with, say, under 10 or 20 miles and the charger doesn't work? So I think the combination of the lack of charging options, which now Tesla is helping these companies resolve almost immediately, but really starting in 2024, the lack of charging, and then their cost structure. I mean, today a Polestar, SUV crossover is in the 70 to $80,000 range. That's their new crossover. The Cadillac Lyric, which these are all Model Y equivalents, the Cadillac Lyric is in the mid 60s. These are not. And then if you look at the value of buying a Tesla, you can get a Model Y without any incentives in the upper 40s. And then you layer on the incentives, and you're below 40 when you start doing that. So that's part of that's part of the issue. It's the economics of the vehicle and the value of what you're getting, and it's the lack of charging that will keep the adoption rate lower. That's why Jim Farley, Mary Barra, um, RJ Scaringe of Rivian, all these auto CEOs said, "All right, let's jump on the Tesla solution." I mean, Tesla has installed. I think I saw this stat, 4.5 times the number of chargers in the US of all the competitors combined.
Yep. Okay. So a lot of other things about superchargers, and then the costs are going down, the incentives, and like you said, just as more and more people buy this, and it's just going to skyrocket more. I think it's going to be a lot more than they think. Thank you,
And
Jeff. We
Herbert, one more
appreciate that.
thing, yeah,
Yeah.
we did one more thing last, or the week before, on net promoter score. So when
Right.
people buy a Tesla, they're giving it a 97 net promoter score, which is unheard of. Not only in
Wow.
auto, but it's actually unheard of in any industry. So that word of mouth, that is also going to help drive adoption significantly.
Wonderful. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Hey there, thank you for joining me. If you can, please consider supporting this channel so I can keep it going. It's a lot of work arranging all these amazing interviews. One of the easiest ways is just to click that join button and become a member of the channel. Thank you very much, and let's get brighter.